I'm Shana Meyerson, and I am unapologetically Jewish. So, if you're wondering, as I am, is Donald Trump abandoning Israel and his best effing friend, Benjamin Netanyahu? That's why I'm here today. This is complicated. I'm going to do my best to use my intellectual superpowers to unpack this moment. I won't be able to look at comments while I'm speaking, but I will ask for questions at the end to the extent that I can address them. So at this moment, Donald Trump is threatening to hit Iran hard again. He did it yesterday too, for those of you keeping track. And the day before, he basically told Bibi to ignore the dozens of missiles fired at Israel in order to give peace a chance. After all, no one in Israel was killed, so why should Israel care if Iran is attacking once again? So, as all of you know, Bibi said no to Trump's request and fired anyway. This after a very widely leaked Axios story about Trump calling Bibi effing crazy and other choice words about Israel standing alone if they continue their regional aggressions. Read response to terrorist aggressions. So, what did Israel do? Israel hits. And where does Israel hit? Okay, so Israel hit Iranian air defenses, and this is significant because besides attacking Iran's petrochemical infrastructure, right, which directly affects the Iranian aggression machine, bombing their air defenses signals, well, something more to come. If you remember in, what was it now, October 2024, Israel took out Iran's missile defense system, their air defense system, in order to set the stage, for what would become the 12-day war and then eventually the 40-day war. Got to put that in air quotes because though there was a premature ceasefire called, I would argue that war has not ended and probably will not end for a long time. So if Israel is attacking their air defense systems, it does seem to indicate that what they're trying to do is clear the airspace for future attacks. From whom? From Israel? Or maybe from America? Keep in mind that all of the American assets are still in the Middle East. And if America had real intentions of just relying completely on diplomacy, which is really just false diplomacy, let's be honest, there is no deal forthcoming, then it would seem as if America would take their very expensive assets out of the region, which has not happened. So I know I'm jumping back and forth a little bit here, but let's talk once again about this conversation, right? Where apparently Trump said some very mean things to Bibi. And I'll be honest, even though I think this is staged, it does upset me how it always puts Bibi in a vulnerable stage, playing the role of the eternal whipping boy, whether it's true or whether it's false. And I happen to believe it's false. This wouldn't be the first or even the second time that Trump and Bibi leaked staged arguments to the press in order to deceive the IRGC and lull what's left of their leadership into misguided complacency. I personally think that Trump and Bibi are puppet masters and that they're finely tuning this very strategic communication model in the war of words that everyone assumes they have already lost. Okay, back to the timeline. So after Iran bombards Israel with fresh, missile salvos and Israel fires back, Trump tells both sides to settle down, kids, right? And they do. Both Iran and Israel say, okay, we got our slaps out. Now we will, sort of lay low. Of course, Israel with the caveat that this does not include Lebanon, which Iran keeps trying to tether to themselves, even though the actual Lebanese, not Hezbollah, but the Lebanese government has nothing to do with and wants nothing to do with Iran. Keep in mind that no matter what Iran says to try to convince the world otherwise, they are not Lebanon's protectorate. In fact, they are a destabilizing force because it is Iran that fully funds Hezbollah, which has basically, in effect, not only taken over Lebanon, but have put them in the constant threat of fire because of the way that they insist on attacking Israel relentlessly and then hiding among the Lebanese populace. Sound familiar? Hamas does the same thing in Gaza. Okay, so Iran, Israel, they agree. They're going to stand down. That was like just a little spat, and it's time to move on. And then an American Apache helicopter mysteriously goes down. Keep in mind that Trump's red line of a U.S. casualty was not crossed. Both soldiers on board this aircraft were saved. And it seemed at first that perhaps America was going to obscure the cause of the crash in order to avoid escalation. And then the cause was revealed. So Iran had shot down a $60 million helicopter, and Trump, in his own words, had no choice but to respond. Interesting that Israel had a choice to respond. It was purportedly urged not to when they were attacked, but Trump had no choice. If you have any question about how much war is a war of egos, I think that all of this really brings that to bear, really puts a spotlight on how much this is about maintaining pride. So Trump attacks Iran yesterday, and now he's attacking again today, apparently, maybe even like right now. And the interesting thing is that Iran at least seemed to have Trump right where they wanted him. Engaged in endless negotiations, afraid to return to kinetic warfare, and also pressuring Israel to step away from the aggressions. The IRGC could have left well enough alone, but instead they shot down an Apache. Certainly they knew that this was not going to just fly under Trump's radar. So why did they attack? My guess is that Russia and China, our rival puppet masters, are imposing their own self-interest on Iran, encouraging them to draw the U.S. back into war for a number of reasons. First and most obviously, to undermine Trump before the critical upcoming midterm elections. And second, to continue to draw down the American arsenal and defense capabilities in the face of looming and escalating aggressions, both on Ukraine and Eastern Europe, I think is very much forthcoming. And of course, Taiwan. Keep in mind also that they are both working behind the scenes to cause rifts not only between Trump and Netanyahu, but also the US and NATO, all the while strengthening China and Russia's hand on the world stage. Now, going back to the midterms, let's speak a little bit more of elections, because America isn't the only country that's going back to elections this fall. So is Israel, in case you haven't gotten the memo. Keep in mind that American midterms seem to hinge on America getting out of the war and gas prices returning to normal, because in America, nothing matters more than whether we are paying $1 more at the pump. Wherein the upcoming Israeli elections are very much contingent upon quite the opposite, which is whether Netanyahu will put Israel first and do whatever needs to be done to secure Israel, ensure its long-term safety by overthrowing the IRGC and, of course, their nuclear program. Now, how can both leaders appease the disparate interests of their bases simultaneously? I think a lot could be read in Trump's Truth Social post to the White House. It was a little weird if you saw that. Since when does the president tweet to the White House as the subject of the tweet, telling them, otherwise known as should be us if you're Trump, to let Israel defend itself and stop dragging them through the mud. Interesting, right? Right after the leak of these so-called conversations wherein he puts Bibi in his place. By the way, who's the White House if it's not Trump? I mean, I have to assume he's talking about JD Vance. And I have to assume, as many have, that JD Vance is the source of the flow of Axios and other detrimental leaks. It seems as if there's some trouble in the romance in the White House. In fact, it also seems that if you follow sort of the tweetosphere, the exosphere, that Trump is moving towards perhaps endorsing Rubio for 2028, pray, rather than Vance. I think that all of these perceived differences that you're seeing between Trump and Netanyahu are actually rifts that are forming between Trump and Vance, who does not have Israel's interest at heart. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. And I hate saying this on a video that could come back to bite me, but this is just, of course, my best guess, like everybody else. I think that the United States is about to hand over the war to Israel carte blanche to do anything that they need to effectuate regime change, a better future for Israel, a better future for the Iranian people, a better future for the region, and I would argue a better future for the world. I think the United States is likely going to retreat into a fully coordinated behind-the-scenes supporting role, maintaining a maximum pressure blockade on the Persian Gulf and hopefully opening the Strait of Hormuz to trade, while defending Israel and the Gulf states and stepping in when necessary with the big guns, as we saw in the 12-day war. What will this mean for the nuclear deal that was supposedly just days away this week and for the past year or more? It means that that can is going to be kicked even further, as it inevitably was always going to be, but this time under fire, as it also should have been all along. Once again, tiny, scrappy Israel proves that it alone is willing to do the extraordinarily difficult work of taking on radical Islam and the IRGC, despite the casualties that Israel is inevitably opening itself up to. It's a price that Israel is willing to pay. Why? Because it's always been the price of being Israel. And because Israel understands the existential threat of this moment and the impossible trade-off between short-term losses and long-term security. Basically, because I'm Israel Chai. And I think that Donald Trump understands that. I'm going to see if there's any questions. And if there are, I'll do my best to answer them. Everybody knows I'm the yogi at the bar, even though this has nothing to do with the bar. And I only am me, Shana in LA, with a lot of personal opinions. If you have questions, I'll go ahead and try my best to answer them. Also, please go over to my Unapologetically Jewish YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Get a hold of my dailies. This is going to be today's daily. I'm trying it out on Substack Live today because I wanted to get out like this without all the editing and all the things. But really, I super appreciate the support of those of you who have been supporting me both on Substack and on YouTube. It is integral to my growth that you continue to interact with my content if you like it or if you love it. Meaning watch, share, comment, like all the things, and they are deeply appreciated. Okay, so my Aunt Roberta, President Trump is either losing it or is becoming schizophrenic. Also sounds like the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz if he only had a brain. I laugh at that because I think that this schizophrenia is something that he is purposely signaling in order to confuse the enemies, so they have no idea what to believe or not to believe, and they're left like Shana in the living room trying to figure out what they should be doing. Unlike Israel, which is actually forced by the powers that be to literally give away all of their war plans to the enemy in order to allow the enemy to not only assemble in order to fight against them, but also to get out of the way. This isn't the normal way that wars are fought, and they're definitely not the way that wars are won. America is not going to give away its war plan, as Trump has said over and over again. But I think that this is a very deliberate scramble and part of the war plan to give mixed messaging so that the only way out is through. Iran is going to have to learn to come to the table, the negotiation table, in good faith, or this war is not going anywhere. So Sarah says, it sounds staged to me too. Do you think that the elections in Israel might change the outcome of the war if it's still ongoing? I'm not sure if you mean the lead up to the elections or the results of the elections. Sarah, if you could clarify, do I think that the lead up to the elections are going to change the war or the outcome? I'm going to assume you mean the outcome. So the outcome. Okay, see? I do have intellectual superpowers. So I did a whole video on how elections work in Israel, and I do recommend watching that. That's on my YouTube dailies to understand how the Israeli electoral system works, because it's very, very, very different from, I think there's only 2 or 3 countries on earth that have a similar system. But basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to give the super condensed version, which is that in Israel, you don't vote for a prime minister, you vote for a party, and then the leader of that party becomes prime minister. There's a very oversimplified version of what actually happens, but the answer is that all polls up until and including today seem to indicate that Likud, the party of which Netanyahu is the leader, will most likely get the majority of seats. Okay, so most likely Likud is going to get the mandate to create a government. Now, whether they could create a government or not is another story. But here's what's interesting, Sarah. There's not much of a left-right divide when it comes to the war since October 7th, okay? So I hope everybody knows that everything changed on October 7th, and there was a genuine left far left viable, whatever party in Israel. That doesn't really exist so much today. So my guess is that the most likely alternative to Netanyahu will be Bennett and Lapid, who were also like co-prime ministers in, I think it was 2021, 22. And most likely they will exact the war exactly the same way. I do not see Israel's war strategy changing if, in fact, there is a new prime minister. But a lot of that depends on the coalition. So I said I was going to keep that really, really basic, but let me go one step further into the coalition system, which is to say that if you're going to create a governing coalition in Israel, you basically have one of two choices, and neither one is good. One is you go with the ultra-Orthodox far right, ultra-Zionist parties, okay? Think Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, that is the direction that Netanyahu has taken and that so many people are so angry about, okay? Here's the alternative. You go with the Arab list, such as the Ram party. Last time that they were brought into the coalition and accepted, because they also have to swallow the pill of being part of the coalition, they actually became the kingmakers of the Knesset. We're talking about the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, far left, Arab, and sometimes even Islamist parties being a part of the ruling coalition. So before you get angry about the fact that Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are in the Netanyahu coalition, I do want you to step back for a second and think. If you were in charge of the nation of Israel and you had to choose, you have to choose between the ultra-Zionists and the anti-Zionists, literally the people who want to see your country destroyed, which one are you going to bring into your coalition? I don't believe that Bennett and Lapid are open to bringing the Arab parties back into the coalition. But if they do, I think that's the only thing that could possibly change how Israel approaches this war, and also the Islamist proxies that surround it. So Solstice Sunset says, did Dems nominating a Nazi in Maine change anything? Okay, now I'm going to really embarrass myself when I say that I'm much more vested in Israeli politics than I am in American politics. Did Graham Plattner win yesterday? To tell you the truth, I don't even know. But there has been a lot of I don't even know what the word is. I want to say debate, but that's not even the word in the Democratic Party. For those of you who Graham Plattner won. That is amazing. I think that up until today, what has been so frustrating to me as an American is that the Democratic Party have not taken any steps to distance themselves from the Democratic Socialist, the anti-Semitic, the Nazi elements in their party. We saw a tiny bit of distancing with what's her name in Texas, the woman who wanted to put all Jews into internment camps. Funny, not funny, right? Like that was a bridge too far. But Mamdani calling for jihad, or at least supporting it, was perfectly acceptable to the Democrats. Why? Because Mamdani has what girl in Texas didn't have, which is to say charisma. All the Democrats want right now is power. And they have found out sickeningly, disturbingly, and very, very sadly, that the way to get there is through the DSA. I'm afraid that this is the future of our nation, and I do pay attention to what's going on in LA. And if you saw what happened with our mayoral primaries, I mean, it literally made me so physically ill on Sunday, I couldn't eat. So if you don't know, in LA, Karen Bass, our current mayor, the incumbent, who is a useless POS, on election day was 4 points up on Spencer Pratt, who is the Republican endorsed by Trump, right? And Nithya Raman, who is the DSA candidate, was a pretty distant third. She was down by 8 to 10% behind Spencer Pratt. Now, conservative media was saying the thing out loud that Tuesday night. They said it. Watch the polls. Once they count the late voting, the mail-in votes and stuff, Nithya Raman is going to take the lead. And believably or unbelievably, that's exactly what happened. And Spencer Pratt was knocked out by a few thousand votes. She mysteriously made up these extra whatever, this 10-point differential, as was predicted. So the problem is that our big cities and our most influential cities, New York, Los Angeles, I am sure you're going to start seeing this in Chicago, Miami, name the places, are falling to these Democratic socialists that used to be the pariahs of the Democratic Party, but are now the poster children. So wherein the Democrats have been loath to renounce the unsavory, that's a nice way of putting it, elements in their party, I do want to say that the Republicans on the other side, if you're paying attention, last fall had a huge upheaval against the anti-Semitic, in particular, elements in their party. The Republicans have an anti-Semitism problem, just as the Democrats do. But not only is the Republican one much smaller now, keep in mind, DSA used to be small too, but the Republicans have been very vocal, including all the way up to the president, in renouncing those elements and trying to expel them from the party. So when you say, does nominating a Nazi in Maine change anything? I think it's going to depend on how much the Democrats continue to throw their weight behind him. I mean, even Chuck Schumer, I mean, really? Couldn't say, yeah, well, here's one Democrat that I can't support. I think this is more of an indication of the future of the Democratic Party than anything. And I don't know. Will America wake up the way that Europe seems to be a little bit, like literally just a little bit, and say like maybe Marco Rubio is centrist enough that even the Democrats can support him for president? I don't know, but we're going down a dark, dark path. And if the Democrats take over, we're in trouble. And so is the world. To me, so Sarah, you say, to me, it doesn't even make sense to have an anti-Zionist faction within the Israeli parliament. Welcome to democracy. Okay, so I don't mean that to be, rude or sarcastic, but the fact is that this is the impossible choice that every party is going to have forthgoing because of the vast polarization that we see, not just in Israel, but in the political structure of the world. Exactly as I was just saying, as we're seeing in America itself, that people are choosing, right? And in Israel, everyone has the right to have a vote. Yes, in apartheid Israel, everyone has the right to run for election, to vote, to do all the things and take place in the parliamentary process. So again, I really want to double down on what Sarah is saying. I'm going to repeat it. To me, it doesn't even make sense to have an anti-Zionist faction within the Israeli parliament. I'm going to ask all of you to remind your friends that next time people say, well, Netanyahu is a horrible person because he has Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, at least in the back of the mind, please repeat the mantra. To me, it doesn't even make sense to have an anti-Zionist faction within the Israeli parliament. That statement answers a lot of questions about Israel, about the way that it's governed, and why it has the ministers that it has. It's not as simple as, I don't like this guy, therefore, Netanyahu should take away their ministries. Okay. Like everywhere, politics is a dirty and a very, very, very complicated game. If anybody has any other comments you want to make, please feel free to make them. Please also do me a favor, hop over to my YouTube channel, give me a like, a subscribe, make some positive comments. The more that people make positive comments, the more YouTube passes my content along to people who make positive comments. The more that I'm inundated with negative anti-Zionist comments, which is the vast predominance of what I receive, the more YouTube pushes it out to my haters and the trolls. So it's a very, very simple way to help get the pro message out, not just from me, but from all the content creators who you appreciate. Like, shares, comments, maybe just here in Substack, maybe across platforms, but I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of your support. Thank you for jumping on at the very, very, very last minute. I know I just was like, I'm going to go live. If there aren't any other questions or comments, I'll give it one more minute, and then I'm going to say au revoir. That's French. And I love you too. Thank you so much. Did the Arabs, so the question from Solstice Sunset is, did the Arabs start a Zionist movement? I'm not sure what that means. I think what you mean is there an Arab Zionist party, maybe in the Knesset? If that's the question, I'm not exactly, or do you mean, is there like a parallel Zionist movement in the Arab world? I'm not exactly sure what that question means, but if the question is, do the Arabs have a Zionist party in the Knesset? Yes. Okay. Well, I've been talking, so I'm not sure what yes means. Do the Arabs? I'm going to answer first, and hopefully this is the right question. Do the Arabs have a Zionist party in the Knesset? No. Did they just start one for running as a party? Okay. So as far as I know, no. That being said, not all Arab parties are distinctly anti-Zionist. Okay. But so far as I know, there's not an actual Arab Zionist party, but I could very well be wrong about that. So please feel free to correct the record on that if I am incorrect. Now, I'm really going to embarrass myself by saying I'm more vested in Israeli politics than American politics, because I don't know the answer to that question. Okay. So I think that is all the questions. I'll wait one more minute because I know that not everybody is the fastest typist in the world, and it's very confusing times, and it's very confusing for me too. Of course, I'm just sitting here trying to make sense of it like everybody else. And I wish that I could have had Andrew here with me to put in his 2 cents, but today it's just me, not even at a bar, just at my table, doing my thing. Okay. I think that's all. Thank you again. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, share. I already said that, but sharing is important. And thank you so much. Oh, and Am Yisrael Chai.